case you were wondering about that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good group. Fine turnout. Glad to see you all here. My name is Captain Tom Easley. I have the dubious distinction of being the senior captain at the police department, and the further dubious distinction of being the oldest commissioned police officer in the city of Norman due to the recent retirement of Detective Jim Parks. I want to introduce you to a couple of people, or actually several people, that are going to help us out tonight. Over on my right, your left, Captain Mark Braley, who's with the Professional Standards Division of the Police Department, also known as Internal Affairs. Yeah. Behind him is Lieutenant Jim Cassee. He is with me in the Special Services Division. He is my lieutenant, great guy. Let's go back to Braley for a second. He is a firearms instructor, in addition to his many other talents. He's also a handsome devil. Adjacent to him is Sergeant Brent Barber, who has really done all of the work on this educational process for our people, and now you get the pleasure of seeing an abbreviated version of his presentation tonight. The routine, what we're going to do tonight, is Sergeant Barber is going to run through the PowerPoint presentation. And our point here is to let you know how we, the police, including our communications folks, dispatchers, etc., are going to respond when somebody calls about a man with a gun and a holster walking down Main Street. Following the presentation by Sergeant Barber, we will open it up to questions. Now, the procedure for that is very critical because we are filming and recording this to be placed on the public access channel. Did you know there's a fee for that? I found that out. I just thought it was free, but it's not. I won't tell you how much. I have a mic. It's a portable mic, wireless. If you have a question, Captain Braley is going to take your question. If he can't answer it for you, we're going to seek some other people around the room. Back over in this corner, see a gentleman? Raise your hand. Rick Knighton, City Legal. Next to him is Miss Jeannie Snyder, also Assistant City Attorney, City Legal Department. We will use them as our default. There may be some hypotheticals we will have to bring them in on, and we're prepared for that. But the critical thing is, if you have a question, raise your hand. When Mark Braley recognizes you, do not speak until I get to you with the mic. Otherwise, it won't go on the recording. In other words, the camera will be on you, but nobody will hear what you're saying when they watch the TV program. Everybody got it? Good. Sergeant Barber.
They're fine. Good evening. I will do my best to talk slow to you. I have a tendency to talk very, very fast. So if I get going, slow me down. I don't have a whole lot of stuff here, but I have about 12, 13 slides of information to give you. It's an abbreviated version, like the captain said, of what we're giving to our officers and our dispatchers and people within the department. Long story short, this is probably not any great news to any of you all, but this is not a new concept per se. It's a new concept to us, being in the state of Oklahoma. Beyond that, it is not a new concept. Most states in the United States have some sort of open carry option already, so we are by far not the first people to jump on that bandwagon, and they haven't had any big problems related to those. We're not expecting any problems either. There are some people that are highly concerned or worried about things. We aren't really, and we don't foresee any large, widespread problems or anything of that nature. And the problems that we do expect, as with anything we deal with, we're expecting to be a very small portion of people, both on the public side and our side. People trying to push things more than are reasonable for whatever reason. I can. Is that a little better? I apologize. The map that you see is not a map we created. It's a map that came from opencarry.org. And the different colorings, those are the different states, and what they classify as different levels of licensing or rights and privileges in order to carry weapons openly. The ones that really affect to us are the ones in the red, are the ones that don't allow it. Everybody else allows it in some form or another, whether it's through a licensing process or something of that nature. So it's basically, as you can see, we're not the first ones to do this. We're not expecting anything super critical from it, other than the educational aspects related to it, again, on both sides. The statute itself that created this, if you haven't read it, have most people read this? Has anybody read it? I'm assuming some people have. The statute itself it's not a new law per se. What they did is they took the Self-Defense Act and several other firearms-related and weapons-related statutes, and they altered them or amended them. The vast majority of those changes simply, basically, they took out the part that said concealed carry, and they put unconcealed. And instead of weapons permit, they said license. That is the vast majority of the changes they made. There were some clerical changes on top of that, but that's really what it boils down to. And again, it takes effect November 1st. You all are already probably aware of that. If you're not, there you go. So we've already had people calling and saying, I want to start doing it now. No, not yet. Give it time and wait till it's cold. The full law, or the online version of it, there's a link on there listed for you. The easiest way to do it is go to Google, to be honest with you, or go to the state legislature site and search it from there. But I'll give you a minute. Some of you are already taking pictures of it, trying to memorize it because it's a little long. Our plan. Basically what we did, and I say we, meaning the genius that decided to, when the law came in, who said, hey, we should do something, got stuck with it, which would be me. What we basically did is we got a committee together of our firearms instructors, there were 3 or 4 firearms instructors, myself being one of them through CLEAT. We do our instructing. We have a couple of SDA instructors, including Captain Braley is one of those as well. We got them on board. What we call DTI instructors, which are defensive tactics guys. There are ground fighting, weapons retention side to address any concerns that our people had of that nature. Our city legal side obviously was a big help, helping decipher some of it and dealing with some of their side. And then we got additional information from several different committees and organizations and things that have come together throughout the state. Some of them being related to CLEAT, which is the, if you don't know what CLEAT is, it's the governing body which basically does training for law enforcement around the state. We got input and some input from them, other organizations, and several other different sources. So we didn't just come up with this in theory. So we tried to do our best in deciphering it and coming up from them. What we did is we have now put it out to all of our officers, whether they are on the street, whether they are in detectives, our narcotics guys, our dispatchers, administration. Everybody either has or will have it very soon. The vast majority of our guys have had it already. The ones that haven't are the ones that are either on leave or vacation or something of that nature. So they will all have this, and then of course it'll be added into our future academies and catching up with the people as we add them in. So they've all had this, or at least the extended version of what you're going to get. Their version takes about an hour to an hour and a half, so I'm not going to put you through that for all of our sake. What it really boils down to, same thing that you have seen before probably if you found out about this, but it's the intent of the Norman Police Department to respect the legal rights of all the citizens, including those who carry firearms, according to the Self-Defense Act, and also by informing the public on responses they can expect from us, the police. There are people who have contacted us who are concerned about what we may or may not do. We don't tend to be overly bearing by any means. We don't think it'll change a lot of what we do now, and we don't expect it to. We expect to get some additional calls, obviously, and we'll talk about how we're going to deal with those here in a few minutes. The quote underneath there, the maintaining and enhancing the quality of life in the city of Norman by protecting life, liberty, property, and keeping the peace. That's our mission statement. And that's what we do every day and everything that we do. So that it ties perfectly in line with this. We don't intend to change anything as what we do normally. One of the biggest problems that we foresee is with our dispatch section. I mean, we have created a training for them as well, which is you'll see some of it in here. Our concerns with them are they're the first point of contact for the majority of our calls that we receive. If you pick up the phone and call 911 or the vast number of different 7-digit lines, it goes to those ladies and guys down there. And they are the ones that help give the officers the information they have so they can go do their job. A big concern we have is that we will get the panicked person who has no idea this is coming, who next week or in Thursday, right? Thursday or Friday, sometime this week, or Saturday especially, when their kids show up at Griffin Park to go to their soccer game at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning and somebody shows up with a gun and a holster and they see it. Our concern, if we have any, is that we're going to get the panicked call from the mom or dad screaming there's a guy in the park with a gun, and he hangs up. And that's all we get. Because, of course, we have to respond as we would now, with a bunch of people and a bunch of guns, and there's no need for that. So our concern, and what we're trying to drive home with them, is that we have to have that information from these callers. And, of course, there's limitations on what they get, but we have to have that information so that our guys can respond the best we can and not overbearing and in ways that are probably inappropriate for the situation. But based on what they have, we have to go with what we have. So what we have really focused on them is obviously we need to know where it is that this is occurring. They're pretty good about doing that, obviously, because without that, we can't go find it. So that one's usually taken care of pretty easily for us, unless we're doing a GPS thing off a phone or something. Specifically, if it's in a restricted area where the weapons aren't allowed, is where really more of our efforts or problems possibly come in, and really that's an education issue. Those places didn't change with this. Nothing changed. However, the people that were carrying concealed with their licenses previously who walked in these places, nobody knew they had it if they were concealing it. So they may or may not have even been aware that they couldn't have carried it. Whether there's a disturbance or some sort of altercation involved, which of course changes our response. We're not talking what we're trying to aim at is determining whether this is a traditional weapons call that we deal with currently, or whether we're talking it's an open carry person who's doing nothing other than exercising their right to do that. So that's what we're trying to distinguish between these. Whether it's a holstered weapon or they're walking around with it, pointing at people, obviously self-explanatory. Again, trying to get to the same point. How many people are involved, what they're doing, and if they can give us some sort of type of weapon. And we're not wanting models and calibers. Is it a rifle that they're walking around with, which of course doesn't apply to SDA laws in Oklahoma, or is it a handgun that's in a holster? So again, our big focus with them is that we need to know what we're going to, as with anything. We see that as probably being our biggest battle, and we fight that battle now, and it's just we can only do with what we do. And it works on both sides. In theory, we will respond to every one of those calls that we get. And I say in theory because there are some organizations who have already announced that they're going to do gatherings or public information type events where they'll go pick up trash or something with their guns present, or they'll go eat or something like that. If we already know they're there and we already know that they're not causing a problem and there's nothing else going on, we may not respond out there 50 times a day, obviously. So there are some limitations. That's what the little asterisk is for. But as a general rule, if somebody calls and says there's a guy in the park with a gun, it's in his holster, but we're concerned, would you go check on him? Then sure, we're going to go check on him. We'll send a couple people out and go make sure he's okay and that there's nothing, nobody's concerned, and people will see us there and be happy and go on their way, hopefully, as best as we can make them. Our response. The officers' responses are obviously going to be based on that information that we receive. And or observe ourselves. That is the limitation that we have. We understand that, but that's the limitation we all have as humans and in law enforcement already. We have to respond to what we have at that moment and what we are aware of in order to make the situation the safest we can for everybody involved. Based on that, again, as I've already told you, we will either deal with the calls as a Self-Defense Act call, as we would now anyway, of somebody just carrying their gun as they're allowed to do, or a traditional type weapons call. Some of those will get crossed. We understand that. We'll deal with them the best we can. It's not a great option, but it's something we can't avoid. Once those are determined, obviously our actions from an SDA side versus a traditional weapons call and somebody's pointing guns at people are vastly different. The same thing will be in play when officers are driving down the road and they see people doing this. What we have asked them to do, in theory, is really, unless there's something else going on, we probably aren't going to be contacting every person walking down the street or in the mall without something else going on to verify they have licenses and everything else. It's going to be pretty clear who is probably doing this. The SDA contacts, I'm not going to get into the traditional weapons type calls because it really doesn't apply to this. But the SDA contacts basically will send a couple officers. They'll contact the person, say, hey, we got a call. Somebody called in and said you were at the park with a gun, and they were all worried. So we came out, and that's why we're here. Request to see their license. Under the state law, they're required to show it to us. hopefully will provide us that license. We'll do the best we can to look at it and say, yes, good job, congratulations, no problem, sorry to bother you, but, you know, we have to come out when we're called. And then cut it nice and short and sweet, and unless something else comes up, if they're hammered drunk, or, you know, they don't have a holster for it, and there's an educational side that needs to be applied, or something else pertains, then that's pretty much it. So hopefully we're talking 1 or 2 minutes, nothing significant. We don't see any problems on either side, the police departments or law enforcement side or the public side, the people who are using and exercising this right anyway. I don't think they're going to have any problem doing that, as long as obviously the officers aren't overbearing. And if they are, then it's probably based on other information they've received. So hopefully we won't have those, and we'll work those out as they come up. The recommendations that we are asking in public, as well as our guys, is from a public side, if an officer comes up and starts giving you commands for some reason, or this happens, they're probably basing that on other information they've received. We get panicked people that call us because there are people that are terrified when they see guns. They get scared when they see them in our holsters and locked up in our cars. So there are people who do that. So if we only get that call of that person saying there's a guy in the park with a gun, or maybe he dropped the gun and they didn't see it and it fell out of his holster, or whatever the case is, all they see is somebody walking around with it, they'll probably respond initially differently, meaning there's probably going to be more people. There may be long rifles or shotguns involved and things of that nature, but as a general rule, there won't be for SDA calls. That's our hope. So what we're asking people, obviously, if somebody asks you to do that, and they are, especially an officer, then they comply. After that, obviously, once we figure out what's really going on, we'll explain it and say sorry and move on down the road. We do this now. This doesn't change things. We have calls like this. Occasionally they come up already with the concealed carry stuff. People outside of businesses every once in a while, or somebody sees them putting it in their car or securing it somewhere, and somebody will call in and say there's a robbery going to take place. Well, no, they're not. So we'll show up and do our thing that we do, figure out the story, say, I'm sorry, here's why we did it, and they'll go, okay, no problem. I'd rather be safe than sorry, and we'll move down the road. So we're not expecting a terrible amount of that. As the education process proceeds originally, I'm sure there will be some of it, but that's what we're asking. The other recommendations we're obviously sending out are the same ones we would send out any time, but we're pushing them again because we do unfortunately see the downsides and the negative results of people not following the safety rules, which are very simple. Following basic safety rules that you've already been taught or know, and if you don't, and when you do your classes, your SDA classes, or your the other safety stuff that's kicked in, like don't point guns at people, that those things apply. The licensing requirements are still there. It's not, there's some people who have decided that they think that because it says open carry, everybody can just open carry now. We're not one of those states. Some of those states can. There's still a licensing requirement. They still have to go to the training and the background checks and the people that are carrying. So none of that changed. Seek the knowledge and training if you need it or want it. Using a holster, there is a concern from some people that there will be less than adequate holsters, which I'm sure will occur. And we just don't want the guns dropping out, or kids, you know, getting a hold of them, being curious and doing the things they do. And then securing it when they're not at home, especially with the kids and things of that nature, getting a hold of them or somebody who shouldn't. The situational awareness is just being aware of what's around them. I mean, clearly if somebody's overly interested in their weapon for some reason, or they see officers around and, you know, not continually touching it or holding it or anything of that nature, again, not anything we expect to see, but just something for people to be aware of. And then be polite and understand concerns of others. And by this, I don't mean we all have to understand that we understand that people are different, and some people are going to freak out about this and they think it's the end of the world. There are those people. But, you know, and I'm not saying you have to negotiate with them by any means if somebody's carrying a gun, but we don't want issues to become more volatile than they already have to be. So, and that goes both ways, the people that are carrying and the people who choose not to. So everybody has their different options. It's now, or will be in a couple of days, an option that people have to do, and go down the road doing that. We don't see, like I said, we don't expect any major issues from it. And that's pretty much my part. My part's pretty cut and dry. So I think we're going to question and answers?
Yes, we are.
Unless you have something in the meantime?
I have something I would, let me get in front of the mic. Before we turn this over for questions, Captain Braley will step up and handle that. Again, just to remind you, don't ask your question until I get to you with the mic, right? Now, just so everyone is clear, this is a ground rule. We are not here to discuss the relative merits or demerits of the law. Pros and cons, that time has passed. It is law. There are procedures that you can go through to talk with your legislators, other people. If you disagree with the law, that's your right. That's not why we're here tonight. So if you want to ask a question, we'd love to hear from you. But if you want to criticize the law or build it up one way or the other, that's not appropriate for the circumstances. Everyone understand that. All right, Captain Braley.
Thank you. Again, my name is Mark Braley. As he mentioned, I'm a firearms instructor, law enforcement. I'm also an SDA instructor. I have the most recent copy of the law OSBI sent me just the other day. So hopefully if we can't answer your questions right off the top of our heads, we have some resources to go back to. Does anybody to start have a question? Yes, sir. Stand by.
Mark Campbell, P.O. Box 3503. Just in the past couple of years, we've had a fist fly at a county meeting. We've had citizens and elected officials imply that some people just don't belong in Norman. And City Council has moved to restrict and have had several elected officials hope to abridge freedom of speech here at City Hall. I'm assuming this is a restricted area, this building, but as council and committees decide how to distribute resources, and some benefit and some lose, for the safety of our leaders, will we get metal detectors at each entrance with pass keys for officers?
What we have there is that is a function of the facilities managers and our leaders, like you said. That's really not a law enforcement function as far as funding, things like that. This is a restricted area. For those of you who have your SDA, you're all pretty abundantly familiar with what those are. And this is where city business happens. So no, other than law enforcement, you wouldn't be allowed to carry a weapon, either concealed or unconcealed here. Another question. I have one in the back. Hold on, we'll get you something back there.
Don Parker from the west side. How's the officer going to know when he sees people walking down the street with a weapon, who is licensed and who is not?
We won't. And quite frankly, we don't know now if you're carrying a weapon concealed. What we do is we'll work on the information that we have. If someone calls in on someone, we can go check on them. But otherwise, our plan is to allow people to exercise that right. It's like driving a car would be my comparison. I don't stop each one of you to see if you have a driver's license. Something has to happen to get me to stop you. So that's the premise that we're working on there. All right, another question. I have a couple down here. I'll get you. Oh, got one, so you don't have to walk as far. Good call, Captain.
So every caller that y'all get, are y'all gonna check the license or just depending
You know, it's
on-
going to depend on the situation. We have beat officers, so if you're walking around open carry in a beat, there's a very good chance that the same officer is going to be responding to you. And if the call comes out that there's a gentleman openly carrying, wearing a dark-colored shirt that says sarcasm on it, well, he's already contacted you once. He's probably going to notify dispatch, hey, I've checked on this gentleman and he's fine. He's well within the law. Down front, please.
I have three very specific questions. Is that okay?
Please.
Okay, just a second. Okay, first of all, when you get a call to 911, and I understand the procedure that you guys put up there, and I like that, but will you inform the caller that open carry is a legal activity so as to try to keep that down in the future?
That's part of the educational process, yes. When we do receive calls like that, depending on the call volume that they're getting right then, I mean, I can't ask our dispatchers if they're getting slammed to stop and break down the law for everyone who calls, but if they have time, the intention is that they let them know, hey, new law came into effect November 1st, open carry of firearms is allowed. It is not an illegal activity as long as you're properly licensed.
Okay, thank you. My second question for you is on a contact, absent reasonable suspicion that a crime is afoot, your officer asked to see the license. Does he inspect the license, hand it back, say have a nice day, or do we go further with that?
That is our intention. If for some reason I contact you and I ask to see your license, and you present me a valid SDA license, yes, it's my intention to hand it back and tell you to have a lovely day.
Okay, so we're not going to go run name and date of birth and all that sort of thing
No,
without?
absent anything else. If you're carrying a very large TV at 3 o'clock in the morning carrying openly, that's going to be different. But
Clearly, that's reasonable suspicion.
Right.
Okay, and my final question is, I'm just going to give you a hypothetical. I'm in Walmart, and I'm comparing the price of eggs, and I'm legally open carrying. Some third-party citizen comes up to me and starts raising hell with me. And I turn to them and say, sir, I really don't want to talk to you. Please leave me alone. You know, and then they continue, and it grows and grows. Hey, honey, call the police. Okay, sir, you're disturbing my peace. Please leave me alone. Can that person, how does that play out? Police come, and he's raising hell, and I stayed calm.
Quite frankly, if someone starts accosting me for whatever reason in the middle of a public place and disturbing my peace, I'm probably going to be the first one on the phone. Now, when the police officer gets there, he's going to have to untangle that mess. Everybody's clear on that, because there's two sides to every story. Yours, his, and whatever happened in the middle, which is pretty close to probably what
Hopefully
really
there'll be a witness.
hopefully it won't occur. All right, that's what we're shooting for. But yeah, we'll get there, we'll untangle the mess, but on either side, you don't have to take abuse.
Thank you.
You bet. I have one right here, and then we'll come to you, this gentleman right here.
I'm currently concealed carry, and if I continue to do that with a clip on my pistol that fits on my belt loop underneath my shirt, am I legal, or does it have to be holstered?
You know, and that is an excellent question. Now then, you say that your weapon has a clip directly on it? Yes. That is part that we're going to have to get cleared up. But right now, what it says is it has to be in a holster, a belt or shoulder holster, designed to carry a firearm.
Even concealed?
Even concealed, no, it just, right. Concealed is the same thing. You're fine. But everybody here, actually, I would say the majority of folks here have had the class, so we're all answering for you.
Yeah.
But the consensus is, yeah, as long as you're concealed, you're good to keep doing whatever it is you've been doing.
And so if I raise my arm to get something and it shows, I'm safe?
You're fine. The
Thank you
intent
very
of
much.
the law, you bet. It's the intent. We're not looking to gig people just because your jacket flies open. Another question was right here.
Dustin Merritt from Noble. Along with a lot of Noble residents, we do a lot of business in Norman. I have run into this in Norman where I've gone into a business, their signage for no weapons was obstructed on the way in. I noticed on the way out that they did see no weapons. Technically, I'm committing a crime.
True.
What is your stance going to be on that?
Our stance is going to be the intent of the law.
Okay.
We're not looking to gig you. If you notice, if a manager comes up and say, "Hey, sir, we don't allow weapons," my bad, didn't see the sign, there was a basket in front of it, and you leave, I don't see that there's an intent to violate the crime.
I have a follow-up question to that. Would your officer hopefully then educate the store manager or whatever that he needs to eliminate the obstruction to that signage for no weapons?
Potentially, best case scenario, our officer never shows up because the
I
manager
understand, but
contacts you and says, and you're like, "Hey, I didn't
If
see
they
it."
were called.
If they were called, then I would hope so. As you explained to the officer, this is the reason that I carried. I was not aware I was in violation. There wasn't any intent there.
Okay.
And I have one right now.
My question is, I work in a place where weapons will not be allowed. How do we approach someone if they walk in not realizing that they're not supposed to have it there? What is our best response as frontline staff?
Okay, there are several considerations for that. Feel free to jump in if you guys have something, but thanks. Couple considerations. One is your comfortability. Whatever you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable going up to someone who's armed, who you don't know, and your management isn't, I'm sure the Norman Police Department would assist you in that. What we don't want is to make a practice where if there's someone with a weapon, let's call the police and make them kick them out. If it's your store and you don't want them there, feel free to have management or whatever go up and just politely say. Again, I'm an SDA instructor, and of all the classes that I've ever taught, I'm pretty comfortable that anyone I've ever taught would be approached by someone, they'd happily go out and put it in their trunk or whatever if for some reason they didn't see the signage. Let's go to this side of the room. Uh-oh. City legal's going to weigh in.
Just one point of clarification. Private businesses have the option of either allowing you to carry or not, or prohibiting carrying in their business. A lot of people think that if a business wants to do that, they have to have a sign posted. That is not actually correct. A business owner can ask you to leave, and if that person asks you to leave, regardless of whether there's a sign posted or not, you're required to leave, because if you don't, then technically that's trespassing. So we would like for businesses who don't want people to carry openly or concealed to post a sign, but in those instances where they don't have a sign posted, if somebody from the business asks you to leave, then you're obligated to leave. I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, check. And again, most of the people in this room, if someone came up and asked you, this is my business, I prefer no firearms, I have no doubt you would comply. It isn't a contest.
Thank you. I have two questions. One of them is, as a business owner, do I have the legal authority to permit concealed carry in my business and prohibit open carry?
You do. You do. Now, how that signage is going to work, I'm not sure. I heard an example just the other day from a business owner, and I cannot recall it off the top of my head. Yes. Yes.
They put up signs that say no open carry. We're perfectly fine.
Check. So yes, you can allow concealed carry while prohibiting open carry.
And then as a matter of personnel policy, is it permissible for me to prohibit my employees from concealed carry or open carry while simultaneously allowing the public visiting my business to?
Most assuredly. Yes, you can control that. I'll start moving towards the back there. We'll this side of the room real quick, and then we'll come back.
Evening. Dave Buckles from the West Side. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for having this. It's really nice to have an open forum and to be able to discuss this in advance. And I've enjoyed hearing the answers. This really sounds a lot more like Oklahoma than Massachusetts, so thank you for that. Is there any way we can get a copy of the training documents being provided to the officers, the policies and the training being handed down?
The entire hour and a half worth?
That would be wonderful. Not necessarily right now, but just offline for review, that would be wonderful.
We do have it. It's all going to be based off our SDA, off the brand new SDA law, which is out, and I believe the website was up there. As far as the training, I would have to defer on that until I can get more information. Come see me at the end of this. I'll give you one of my cards.
Absolutely, thank you.
And then we'll see how the legal wrangles out on that.
The majority of the stuff that's in there, excuse me. The majority of the stuff that's in there that we didn't have is a lot of the legal verbiage from the law and reminders of our officers of prohibited places and to answer questions. So outside of that and some tactical issues that obviously we have to do more as a refresher of our guys and make sure everybody's on the same page, there's not a whole lot extra. So by reading the law and deciphering it the best you can out of the legalese, then that answers most of that.
One other point. By and large, we are happy to provide you with information as the goings-on within the police department, the lesson plan, for example, as long as it does not impact officer safety. If it does, we have to think about it just a little bit.
Okay, I'm a local restaurant owner, and what is the policy concerning alcohol service? Can people with an open carry law be served alcohol?
No.
Okay.
No, and now as far as the service, they may carry into your business if it's allowed. However, typically the restaurants that we know of have the little roped off area that says bar, you can't pass there. At that point, it's considered a bar. So you can't be sporting your weapon and sitting at a bar stool in that area. If it's a business that is solely for the sale of alcohol, also there's nobody, you're not allowed to be in that.
Okay. Secondary question. In terms of the license itself, is it okay for somebody to present that license as a form of ID when my bartender's IDing someone to make sure they're 21?
Well, now there's one I've never had before.
We get it with concealed weapons.
It is a state-issued ID, yes, and you have to jump through many hoops to get it, along with providing all the necessary items. And off the top of my head, I would say yes, that is a state-issued ID, and we would have to work under the assumption that that would be an accurate date of birth on that.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding is if I go into a restaurant that has a bar or whatever, I'm not allowed to even order a drink if I'm concealed carried. Is that correct? That's what I was taught in my training. If you got that gun,
We
don't
really like
order
to
a
try to
drink.
separate alcohol and firearms. We try to keep those as separate as we can. I think that would be an argument for attorneys to battle, but quite frankly, if I'm carrying, I don't drink. I mean, it's not, probably not prudent.
It's kind of a silly question, but
No.
is there any specifics on retention for an open carry officer? Do you
No,
guys
there's
have any
not. And,
recommendations?
I had a meeting with Director OSBI and the head of CLEAT and several other, OHP, Oklahoma City, several other agencies. And that was one of our biggest concerns is retention. And no, it does not address retention. Retention means the ability for the weapon to stay in the holster. See, if you were to pull up on mine, it won't come out. You have to know the secret code. And I'm not telling you. I had another one.
I have one right
here. Okay.
He asked the question about alcohol. Can you please clarify to him the, if their primary, if they sell more alcohol than food? Can you please clarify that for him?
Right. That's, can you find that, get a percentage on me, just so I can remember? Yes, basically, if you sell more alcohol than you do food, means your primary focus is alcohol sales, then you will not be allowed to carry in that. And you say, okay, well, how do I know if they sell more alcohol than food? Quite frankly, it's pretty easy, and I don't want to name specific businesses here tonight, but you can think in your head places where you would go and not want to eat anything there. Then there's a pretty good chance, that most of their sales is for alcohol.
If you can go in under 21. If you can go in under 21 or not.
Sir. Change your Mark?
Yeah. That's the easiest way for you is probably.
Time out, repeat the question.
Go ahead and clarify that.
Sorry. The easiest way probably to, and I forgot who asked it, but somebody over here, thank you. Easiest way probably to tell, so you don't have to worry about it, is if it's a place that does not allow people under the age of 21 in their period, it's a bar. And there's about 6 or 7 of them in town. That's the place you're not allowed to. Anything else, the other normal restaurants that just serve liquor or have that little zoned off area, they're good. Those are classified as restaurants according to the state.
Because I know in Texas, there's a 51% sign that goes up in the door.
Yeah, on ours, they just say you're not allowed under 21, persons under 21 aren't allowed, or something of that nature. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it's a classification that's made by the state, whether they're a restaurant or a bar.
And that's consuming alcohol.
Correct.
Consuming,
Not the liquor
not a liquor store, because you can't consume there. But it may have a little sign there that prevents it. We have another?
If I allow employees in my shop to carry openly and you guys do show up, are you gonna search or ask to see the permit for everybody in the?
The law allows, and even previous laws allowed, this isn't a new portion, but if you are the proprietor of a business, you may carry a weapon. And that's to include even bars, if you're the proprietor, and they are exempted from that. So I wouldn't anticipate, knowing where your shop is and the fact that you know every police officer here, but if you didn't, then I wouldn't anticipate, as long as you identified them as employees. We had right here, I believe.
I just want to back up a little bit on this signage for the right in the premise. How come there's not a restriction on where that sign to be and a standardized sign? Tonight I walk in this building looking for a sign, it's 7 feet up in the air. That's hard to see.
And That is a answer I don't have for you, because that is part of the law and would be part of the legal portion of it that isn't really law enforcement, though I know we're going to have to deal with it. But, yeah, legislature would be the ones that would need to address that. And I know that's going to be a difficult thing to make law, because every building's different, everybody has different windows, everybody has different door sizes. But the standardization of that is going to be through the legislature. We have, just say, he's going to come back to you. Red shirt right there, I believe, gentlemen.
Is there an indifference in the new law compared to the old law as far as me notifying law enforcement the minute that they confront me?
No, but, and I see where you're going with that. I've probably got a pretty good idea that you're carrying a weapon because I'm stopping you because you're carrying a weapon. But no, you can identify yourself as an SDA holder, and that will speed up the process greatly.
Could you clarify that restraint on the holster? Is that a thong, if we have a leather holster right now that doesn't have a strap or?
It's perfectly legal.
Okay.
Yeah, a bucket holster.
Don't have to put a thong on it?
No, no. We're working our way back to you.
When you when you're carrying an open carry holster, can you carry it in a cross-draw fashion?
Yes, as long as it is in a holster secured to you that is designed to hold a weapon, yeah. You can carry a shoulder holster, you can carry a cross draw, as long as it's in that holster. Do we have any as we move back this way? Do you have any others? All right, let's come back down, then we'll head back up.
Thank you. I'm imagining some businesses will proudly allow guns and some people will be proud that they don't. Have other municipalities listed on their websites businesses that do or do not for people that want to frequent certain places?
No, not to my knowledge. Yeah, I don't know of any. Yeah, when you start getting into the corporate things, folks want to start backing off. And then the local businesses, it's their prerogative. I think we have that way and then head that way if you don't mind, sir.
Senior captains get to do all the walking.
Yeah, I got the good job, didn't I? I can stand still.
This might be silly, but I usually carry my weapon in my pocket, so it's not holstered.
It's not holstered?
No.
Well, and
but
it's
it's
also
still concealed, though.
And it's concealed.
Okay, so that's okay.
It's all right. Say again?
Sorry. What about if he doesn't have it in a holster in his pocket and it prints and it shows?
Understand, but I have a pocket holster that is molded to my weapon, so it prints too. So.
Works for me. Question is, if I've left my wallet in the car, something like that, and by accident, and I no longer have my license on me, what is there's no way to call it in and get like my driver's license. Are we just going to walk me to my car?
Yeah, and that's going to be on the flexibility and the time that the officer has. For the most part, if you're fishing and you left your fishing license in your truck, the warden's going to let you walk back the truck and show you the fishing license. If it's feasible, Norman Police will allow you to do that as well. Right behind you, and then we'll come back down.
There is a website that people have been listing the businesses that are not allowing you to carry in, but I do not remember the website.
Okay, that's a Google.
Is it Friend or Foe?
Friend or Foe? All right. We got one right up front.
Thank you. It's kind of getting away from the firearm aspect. I've always wanted to know this question. What about a stun gun or a taser? Are you allowed to carry them into any place?
Yeah, that gets into more of a prohibited weapon. That's not going to be covered under the Self-Defense Act.
Okay.
It is strictly for handguns.
Yeah, I don't think there's a law. I read that prohibits carrying a stun gun anywhere in the state of Oklahoma.
I'd have to look at 1272 or one of those similars.
Okay.
but I'm
I
not.
was
I'm
just
not-
curious. Thank you.
All right, do we have any, I should. That's fine. You're doing great.
Does the SDA clarify if you can only carry one, or can you carry multiple firearms on you?
You know what? I don't know of anything that clarifies that, so my guess is that it doesn't. However, it won't affect our response to the call. Second. All right.
Mark, we have a question.
All right. What do we have?
This is kind of general too about a place of business. In times past, several years ago, I was in retail. And at that time, you could carry openly or concealed in your place of business. Before, that was pre-SDA. Is that still that way
Yes.
in your place of business? Can
Yes.
you and your
employees
that you authorize carry whether they have an SDA or not?
That's correct.
Okay.
If you're on your property,
Yeah. You're on.
you can carry concealed or unconcealed. It doesn't matter. It's your property. As long as you don't go busting caps, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Then we will become involved in a good way or bad way. Yeah.
This isn't a question, but just more of an addition of information. Before Senate Bill 1733 was signed into law, well, actually, currently, before it goes into effect, there is some gray area about, and it depended largely on who your police force was. Could you open carry a firearm while you were out trimming trees or mowing your grass? Some people said that it was not legal, some people said that it was. However, with November 1st, starting on Thursday, anyone who is not a prohibited person, meaning a felon or somebody who's got mental problems, can carry a firearm without an SDA permit on property that they own or legally control. So that is no longer a gray area, that is your right to do so.
And that begins the 1st. All right, do we have any anyone have any other final questions? No one? No one? Go ahead.
You're asking in your vehicle? Yes, I believe so.
As far as, are you talking about transporting? Yeah, you're covered. Yeah, if you're on your bike and your shirt flies up, you're golden.
Stop here. You're next.
Speaking of vehicles, do y'all's parking lots have any cameras? Because I'm assuming everybody's guns are out in their vehicles.
I will not comment on the security of our current, but don't try to break into my car.
Okay, you may have addressed this already, but if I'm in my vehicle and I have a gun on the seat that is not holstered, but it's in view, does that violate the law?
Is it loaded?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that's transporting a loaded firearm. If it was unloaded, then you would be better off that way. I recommend taking the SDA class if you're going to have a gun in the car.
Well, I mean, if you have your SDA permit,
I
and
see
you
what-
normally have a concealed gun, but it's in open view, but it's not holstered, and it's not on your body.
No, you're still going to be covered under SDA, the
Okay.
way I understand it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. That's no different in your glove box or anything else. All right, do we have any, down center and then hard right?
3 more. Wow. Stop here first.
Just kind of to follow up on what he was saying, and what he'd said about property under your control, is a vehicle considered property under your control?
Yes.
You just answered that question in a way that says that somebody without an SDA license can carry a loaded gun in the car.
No, are you talking about without a gun, a permit? with an SDA, you can carry in your car. Yes. Yes, with an SDA.
But if they do not have an SDA, they can't carry it openly when they're mowing the lawn, but openly in their vehicle.
It would have to be unloaded.
Transporting.
Right.
I think city legal's going to help us clarify here. Stand by.
Yeah. No.
They're
I'll make the
researching.
assumption he meant that it was an SDA machine. Yeah.
Got a question right here, Mark.
All right.
I just need to clarify on the holster. Does it need a locking mechanism, or where are we?
No.
Okay. No lock. It does not have to. Okay.
No, bucket holster's fine at this point.
Okay.
Because the SDA currently doesn't teach retention. Well, yes, I teach retention in my classes, but that's up to the instructors as far as retention. The holster doesn't have to have anything special.
Did I read in the paper that it was, I need to clarify this, that open carry is allowed in the school parking lots?
Okay, open carry is you can transport a firearm in your car onto a school parking lot if it's just for the purpose of picking up your child and then you're going to drive away. You can't leave that car and leave that gun in that parking lot.
What if Johnny forgets his book pack?
Johnny's going to get an F, or mom or dad's going to get a ticket.
Okay.
It's going to be, you're going to have to work around that.
You'll
And
be
I would-
very strict on that?
Yes, it's very strict.
Thank
And-
you.
And the Norman Police Department's going to be pretty strict on that as well. Yes, it's felony, yeah. Norman's going to be pretty strict on that.
All school property?
Yes. To include private schools. Correct.
If you don't have an SDA and you get stopped by an officer and you have a loaded firearm, he can write you a $70 ticket.
Yes.
Number two, if you have an SDA license, you can carry a rifle or shotgun loaded but not chambered in the interior of your vehicle. Otherwise, if you don't have an SDA, it has to be it can be in the trunk loaded but not chambered.
Okay. I'm going to defer to legal on that one. Basically because now we're starting to get into the minutia of the law when we're talking about the response that Norman's going to have for you carrying or not carrying, or what the business owners are going to need to do. But we can do some clarification if you want to hang out with that one.
This is weird. The ticket thing in the vehicles is very dependent upon what you're stopped for. If you're stopped for a traffic violation, that's correct. If you're stopped for a criminal violation, then it's a totally different world. Yeah, if it's just speeding or you didn't have your seatbelt on, you have your gun, that's the ticket. Correct. If you're stopped for something else, then different world. Hopefully that doesn't apply to anybody here.
Yeah, back in the day, you got arrested for it, but not anymore. It's a ticket. It's a citation. Okay. One, two.
First timer.
Get to you. We're looking for first time questions here.
Well, this may be stupid, but is your back pocket considered a holster?
And we've talked about that. And if it's in your back pocket, it's concealed.
Even if the butt's still sticking out?
It would need to be in a holster if you have it sticking out, yes. You would need it to be in a holster. No.
Concerning the loaded firearm in the school parking lot, does that include the University of Oklahoma?
The university will not be, and again, that's going to be a little difficult for me to answer because the university police are going to handle it the way that they handle it, and I can't speak for them on that, but it's my understanding that you can't have a firearm on the university property either. It works just like school, VOTEC.
Well,
yeah.
When I took my SDA class, we were informed in that class that as long as the weapon was concealed and locked up at the University of Oklahoma or Oklahoma State University, it was legal to have it in your
In the parking lot.
In the parking lot,
In the parking lot,
not anywhere
yes.
else.
Yes, in the parking lot. K through 12 on the strict stuff that we talked about. VOTEX and universities.
You talked about having a gun in your holster back here, in the back pocket. If you have a pocket holster,
Mhm.
And it's clipped, the gun that has a clip on it, and it still shows a little bit?
I consider that having a holster, if you have a pocket holster,
Okay,
because it's designed to carry that weapon.
okay, because my particular weapon has a clip like this other gentleman does on it.
Yeah,
That
direct-
you know, you clip to the side of your jeans or something.
Mhm.
And I've noticed that there is just a little bit of it shows.
And that shouldn't interfere or affect the way that we respond to the call.
Okay,
So, yeah, you should be good on that.
thank you.
Going back to what that gentleman back there had said about the university, it's my understanding that OU's policy is that you are not allowed to have firearms in your vehicle with an SDA. That puts university policy in conflict with state policy, and I know OU has their own police department. Is that outside the scope of this?
Yeah, that's going to be outside the purview of this. And that's going to be a case law issue, just like all of this is going to be a case law issue. Since it's a new law, there's going to have to be somebody cited or in trouble, and then they're going to sue, and then we're going to have case law made from it. And at the last meeting I had, we all voted that Oklahoma City should be the ones to do that.
We don't want to be the poster child.
No.
I failed to identify myself earlier. My name is Brian Hull. I'm on the board of directors with the Oklahoma Open Carry Association. And this isn't a question. I'd just like to say thank you very much for having this meeting. The main purpose of our organization is to educate the public, and doing things like this, I salute you for doing so. Your policy that you have outlined is well within what we feel is reasonable response by law enforcement, and I just want to tell you that as an organization, we appreciate what you've come out with, and thank you very much for doing this public forum.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your support. I think we've got one.
I just need clarification. I didn't understand what the gentleman said about chambered weapon over there. Is that rifles?
Yeah, we're talking rifles and shotguns at that
Okay,
point.
doesn't
Not
affect
covered
me.
under
Thank
this.
you very much.
Gentleman with the green shirt.
Yes, sir.
I came in late, but to get a license, is it better to go through the law enforcement people, or I've been approached by people who do this privately? It's the same sort of training. I'm sure they have the same standards, and the
It
price
is.
is about the same.
It is. The curriculum is the same. We all teach off the same standards. I doubt that one is going to vary too much from the other.
And everyone who does that has the proper ID for being able to carry that class.
Yes, yes. There is an application process that you have to go through to become an instructor, and then once you satisfy that, then yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more? One more. Okay.
What about airport property?
Airport property, that sounds like a good question for the airport police, because man, it starts getting tricky when you get near airports, and police don't even take their guns to the airport. It's pretty tricky.
Yeah, I think just leave them
Yeah.
at home.
We'll defer that to the airport police. All right, we have one more back here.
I think he was probably referring to Will Rogers International Airport. What about places like Westheimer?
Again, that's a bifurcated issue in that that's university property, but it is also an airport, and I believe they have some federal jurisdictions over things that go on at airports, and I'm not competent to speak to either one of those.
All right, thank you.
You bet. One more question. One more question.
On the subject of airport.
Okay, everybody knows Ozzy's breakfast is pretty good on the weekends up there at the airport. Say you're going to Ozzy's, which is in the airport. Is that a gray area? Or
That,
no?
actually, to my knowledge, that could be a black and white area. However, since it's not my jurisdiction, I don't want to make that call. I think that's an OUPD call, and contact them and ask them what their stance is on that. Captain Easley, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, sir.
Good group. I'm all pumped up now. Got my cardio in. I feel pretty good. As with all circumstances, ladies and gentlemen, individuals, and that includes individual officers, are going to respond based on their gifts and their talents, their experience and training. But bottom line is we want all of our officers to respond prudently and take all facts and circumstances into consideration. And we ask that those of you that carry or choose to carry openly exercise the same prudence. Are there any further questions before we wrap this up? Yes, sir.
In the apparently unlikely event that a citizen who is lawfully open carrying feels like that they have been mistreated or their rights have been violated by the city of Normanton Police Department, what would you like to tell them to do in that event?
Shall I do this to you, Mark?
Not my phone number.
You can contact Captain Mark Braley by calling 321-1600. That's not his direct line. That poor operator, she pulls her hair out a lot with a lot of us. And we all feel real sorry for her because we all give out that number, which is the general number. 321-1600. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, sir.
As an airplane owner, like when you're taking a trip in your car,
Yes, sir.
you go from a civilian airport to another airport. Technically, that's school property here, but airports are generally federal property now. If you're taking a vacation or traveling, and you simply carry, not open carry.
Concealed carry.
Is there an answer you might have for that?
No. You would need to check with that jurisdiction that you're flying into and see if they have a reciprocal agreement with the state of Oklahoma for concealed or open carry. You'd have to do your research and do it well. Do it very well. My advice, I'm a card-carrying, pistol-packing police officer and have been for 28 years, but my response to it is when I travel with my family, I don't take any guns. I leave them at home. It's just too risky these days. Now around here, different story. Anything else? Last chance. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Give yourself a nice round.